Welcome to 15 Minutes Health, your source for clear, evidence-based insights in nutrition, neuroscience, longevity, and everyday wellness. Each video delivers science you can trust, designed to help you build a stronger, healthier life, all in under 15 minutes. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss practical, science-backed tools that can improve your health for the rest of your life.
Today, we're diving deep into the neurobiology of social bonds. We're going to explore the specific brain circuits, the hormones, and the neurochemicals that drive our most fundamental need, the need to connect. We'll look at family, friends, and romantic partners. And by the end, you're not only going to understand why these connections are so critical for your health, but you'll also have a toolkit of science-based protocols you can use to consciously build and improve them.
You know, this isn't just a nice philosophical idea. It's a hardwired biological reality. Our nervous system is built for social connection. In fact, it turns out that the strength of our social ties is one of the single best predictors of how long we'll live, even more so than diet or exercise. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the specific circuits and hormones that make this true. And more importantly, we'll translate that science into practical tools you can start using right away to strengthen the most important relationships in your life.
To really get why connection is so vital, it helps to first look at its opposite, social isolation. Now, a little bit of solitude can be great, but true social isolation, when you're deprived of the connection you actually want, is seen by your brain as a major threat to survival. It literally triggers a chronic long-term release of stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. Now, in the short term, those hormones are great for a fight or flight situation. But when they're elevated day in and day out, they hammer your immune system, increase inflammation, and just wreak havoc on your metabolism. This feeling isn't just in your head. It's a powerful biological alarm bell designed to get you to do something. And that's what brings us to the core concept for today's explainer.
Okay, so what is homeostasis? It's just your body's process for keeping everything stable on the inside. Think about hunger, right? Your brain is constantly tracking your energy levels. When they dip below a certain point, it creates that feeling of hunger. It's a powerful, uncomfortable drive that motivates you to go find food. And once you eat, the drive goes away. Well, it turns out our brain has a nearly identical system for social connection. It's constantly measuring how socially full we are, and it will drive us to either seek out or even avoid people to maintain our own unique social balance point. So that's our roadmap for today. We'll start by exploring that core drive for connection, the parts of your brain's social thermostat. Then we'll get into dopamine's really surprising role in social motivation. We'll uncover the incredible power of physiological synchronization, how our bodies literally get in sync. We'll explore our brain's attachment blueprint through the lens of empathy. And finally, we'll talk about oxytocin, the hormone that really is the glue for our long-term bonds. All right, let's dive into this idea of social homeostasis. The thermostat analogy is pretty much perfect. A thermostat has to do a few things. It senses the current temperature, it compares it to the temperature you've set, and then it kicks on the heater or the AC to get things back to that set point. Your brain does exactly the same thing for your social life, and it uses a dedicated 4-part circuit to do it. Let's just quickly break down how this circuit is built. First up, you've got the detector. These are brain areas like the anterior cingulate cortex, which helps process social pain, that feeling of rejection, and the basolateral amygdala, which is busy reading social cues. Together, they're sensing the quality of your interactions. Second, you have the control center in the hypothalamus. This is the master regulator of your internal state, adjusting things like your heart rate and hormones. Third, and this part is absolutely crucial, you have an effector. This is the system that actually drives your behavior. It's a tiny but powerful brain region called the dorsal raphe nucleus, or DRN. And we're going to talk a lot more about that in a second. And finally, there's a fourth piece, the prefrontal cortex, which adds context. It's the reason you can feel lonely but still think, yeah, but I don't want to hang out with those people. It gives you the flexibility to make smart decisions instead of just following a raw drive. So how does this circuit actually translate into a real motivation, a feeling that gets you up off the couch? Well, the key, the secret sauce, is in that effector we just mentioned, the dorsal raphe nucleus, or DRN, because it contains a really special population of neurons that release a neurochemical you've definitely heard of, dopamine. But its role here is probably not what you think. Now, dopamine is widely, and I mean widely, misunderstood as the molecule of pleasure. It's not. Dopamine is the molecule of motivation. It's about craving and pursuit. It's the chemical that drives you to move toward things you think will be rewarding. It's all about the seeking and the anticipation, not the reward itself. And in this specific social circuit, it is the engine of our drive to connect.
And this is where the science gets so cool and a bit counterintuitive. A landmark study from the lab of Dr. Kay Tai showed something remarkable. When researchers artificially turned on these specific dopamine neurons in the DRN of mice, it didn't make them feel good. It made them actively seek out other mice. It created a state of social hunger, what we call loneliness, that motivated them to go be social. And when they shut these neurons off, the animals were perfectly happy being alone. So here's the crucial takeaway. This circuit makes you feel lonely on purpose, in order to drive you to connect. That feeling of loneliness is, at a biological level, just the activation of these few neurons releasing a molecule of pure motivation. This mechanism gives us a completely new and, I think, much more powerful way to think about introversion and extroversion. It's not about being shy versus outgoing. It's about the sensitivity of your own personal social thermostat. An introvert, you could say, is someone whose DRN dopamine neurons are just really responsive. A little bit of time alone, and they start getting that strong signal to connect. But on the flip side, they feel socially full and satisfied very quickly during an interaction. An extrovert likely has a less responsive system. They need more time alone to build up that social hunger, and they need more intense or longer social time to hit that same feeling of being full. So the first real tool here is a mindset shift. Stop seeing introversion or extroversion as personality flaws in yourself or others. They're just different biological set points for social satisfaction. Okay, so we have this dopamine-driven motivation that pushes us to seek out connection. But what happens in the actual moment of bonding? How is a connection really formed? Well, a key mechanism here is something called physiological synchronization. Our nervous systems aren't isolated. When we truly connect with someone, our bodies literally start to get in sync on a deep, unconscious level. There was this beautiful study in the journal Cell Reports that highlights this perfectly. Researchers had people listen to the same emotionally powerful story, and what they found was just astonishing. Their heart rates started to fluctuate in sync with each other while they were listening. And get this, it happened even when they were listening at totally different times and in different places. This shows that it's the shared attention on the story that drives our bodies to align. And tons of other research confirms this. The quality of a social bond correlates directly with how much our bodies, our heart rates, our breathing, even our brain waves, are synchronized. It's the body's way of signaling, we're on the same page, this is safe. And this leads us directly to a super practical behavioral tool. The best way to build a bond, especially a new one, isn't always to force intense face-to-face conversation. That can actually feel kind of confrontational. Instead, it's often way more effective to stop focusing on each other and to start focusing together on something external. So the protocol is to engineer shared experiences. Go watch a movie, listen to an album together, go to a concert or a game, work on a project. These things naturally pull your physiological states into alignment without all the pressure of direct interaction, and that creates the biological foundation for a really strong connection. So where do these bonding circuits even come from? Well, they aren't built from scratch when we're adults. They're actually repurposed and built upon the very first attachment circuits we form as infants with our caregivers. To get this, we really need to look at the work of neurobiologist Dr. Alan Shore. He identified two distinct, parallel systems for bonding and empathy that develop one after the other. Dr. Shore's work basically points to two flavors of empathy that run on different neural hardware. The first one to come online is emotional empathy. This is mostly unconscious, and it's dominant in the right side of the brain. It's essentially the physiological synchronization we were just talking about. It's when our nervous systems align, and we literally physically feel what someone else is feeling. This is how a baby and a caregiver connect before language ever comes into the picture. Then, developing later, mostly in the left hemisphere, is cognitive empathy. This is a much more conscious, language-based process. It's not about feeling what they feel. It's about understanding how they think. It's about building a shared mental map of their perspective. A really strong, mature bond needs both. You need that bodily, emotional sync, and you need that mental, cognitive understanding. The tool here is to consciously practice that cognitive empathy. The protocol is to listen, not just to respond, but to truly understand. The goal isn't to agree. The goal is to be able to state their perspective back to them so well that they say, yes, that's it exactly. That feeling of being truly understood is profoundly bonding. So all the things we've talked about so far, dopamine, synchronization, they happen on pretty short timescales, minute to minute. But for our most important relationships, the ones that last for years, biology needs something more permanent. It needs the hormone system to create a lasting bond. And when we talk about the hormone of social bonding, we are mostly talking about oxytocin. So if dopamine is the molecule of pursuit that gets you to the party, Oxytocin is the molecule of contentment that makes you want to stay there with the people you're with. You can think of it as a kind of hormonal glue. It's released when your brain recognizes people that it considers your people. This is called social recognition, and the amount of oxytocin released usually scales with how close you feel to someone. Things like physical contact, a hug, holding hands, that kind of warm, friendly touch is a huge trigger for oxytocin. But so are acts of trust and being vulnerable with someone. Oxytocin is what takes those fleeting moments of synchrony and solidifies them into a bond that feels safe, stable, and rewarding over the long haul. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground here, from the basic driver connection all the way to dopamine, synchrony, empathy, and oxytocin. So now let's pull all of this together into a really clear set of protocols you can actually use to build and deepen your social bonds. This table really gives you a practical framework. So for example, if your goal is to deepen an emotional connection, the mechanism you want to target is physiological synchrony. The tool is to engage in those shared experiences with an external focus. If you want to increase mutual understanding, maybe resolve a conflict, the mechanism is cognitive empathy, and the protocol is to practice that active listening with the specific goal of making the other person feel deeply understood. To reinforce a bond and make it feel secure over time, you want to leverage oxytocin release through physical contact, trust, and just showing them you're happy to see them. And finally, to just navigate your social life better, the key is understanding your own dopamine homeostasis. The tool there is that mental reframe of introversion and extroversion. You know, this framework also shines a really bright light on why a romantic breakup or losing a close friend is just so biologically brutal. It's a massive disruption of all these core systems. You lose a primary source of that physiological sync and empathy. Your nervous system goes into a sudden withdrawal from the dopamine that drove the connection and the oxytocin that made it feel safe. It's a true neurochemical devastation, and understanding that can help us be a lot more compassionate with ourselves and others when they're going through it.
And this brings us to a quote from the brilliant neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett that just perfectly sums all of this up. Our connections aren't abstract ideas. They are a deep biological reality. Our nervous systems are constantly and usually unconsciously regulating each other for better or for worse. The people you spend time with are literally shaping your physiological and emotional state, moment by moment.
The whole point of digging into this science isn't to reduce our relationships to a bunch of chemicals and circuits. It's to give you leverage. By understanding the underlying mechanisms, you get specific entry points for conscious action. You can move from just hoping for good relationships to actively building them. You can start to diagnose what might be missing. Is it a lack of emotional sync, or is it a breakdown in cognitive empathy? And then you can apply the right tool for the job. Through some experimentation and consistency, you can use this knowledge to build relationships that are more satisfying, more resilient, and more rewarding. So I'll leave you with this question to reflect on. Now that you have this understanding of the biology, what is one intentional action you can take this week to strengthen a key relationship in your life? Are you going to engineer a shared experience, practice cognitive empathy, or just make a point to offer a hug? The science is clear. These small, deliberate actions can have a profound biological impact. Thank you for joining this explainer.
Thanks for watching 15 Minutes Health. If this video helped you, consider subscribing. Your support allows us to keep creating clear, science-backed content to help you stay healthier, stronger, and better informed. See you in the next video.